Hello and welcome to today's session. I'm very happy to be here and to guide you through this very important topic, also one of my favorite topics, social impact. We're going to talk about how storytelling can be a part of social impact and what it can create for the future and for generations that wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and also how storytelling is a possibility to dive deep into social structures, tackling complex societal issues and offering solutions. And we have two writer, producers and showrunners today here who have been working on two magnificent series that have had also like a big impact in social impact. So the two shows are The Handmaid's Tale, it's a US show, and the German show Sam as Saxon. And please welcome on stage Matthew Hastings and Tyron Ricketts, who will be our guests tonight.
Check 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. First, I'd like to give you a short introduction to today's event because it is a combination of two events from the IFS. It is both part of the IFS Encounter series aimed at a broader audience interested in film and series, and it is part of the European Showrunner think tank, a series of industry events exploring a truly European version of the showrunning. We hope that this session will be interesting for both of the audiences. The European Showrunner think tank is part of the European Showrunner program, which is funded by the Creative European Media Program of the European Union. And tonight's session is also made possible through the support of friends at Cologne production company Network Movie. So thank you, Network Movie. And now, finally, I'd like to introduce to you this amazing guys. Matthew Hastings, showrunner, executive producer, director. He's currently the executive producer, showrunner, pilot director of Fallen for Night Train Media, Silver Reel, and Globo, as well as for many other shows, of course, but I will not count all of them because you're very experienced and we will sit here till tomorrow if I start. So previously you were a co-executive producer on season 4 of Handmaid's Tale for MGM and Hulu, for which he was also nominated for an Emmy. I was waiting for that. And you're also an executive producer and director on the Netflix series Spinning Out, and executive producer director of season 2 and 3 of Shadowhunters. This is a never-ending story. Welcome.
I have 3 kids that are going to college. I have to keep working. So.
Yeah, it's actually a job, not a hobby, right? So, a warm welcome to Tyron Ricketts, an actor, musician, TV producer, and I feel like it's not necessary to introduce him to you because he's a legend in Germany. He was a TV moderator of Viva. I don't know, like my generation still remembers you very well. You're one of the trio showrunners of Sam as Saxon, which was also like a big hit in Germany. And with your production company, Panthertainment, you set focus on stories for and about people of color for global market. You have appeared in numerous film productions since 1995, so you're also very well experienced, and we can't wait to hear your insights. That was the official part. So, like just a short setup for today's session, we're going to talk about the showrunning model in US and Europe, and about social impact in storytelling and showrunning. Then we will open the stage for the audience. So if you have any questions, please keep them in mind. And Matt, am I running the show tonight? Am I the showrunner?
Absolutely, you're doing a great job.
Really, thank you. Flattering. No, like, what is a showrunner model in the US? Can you give us like a brief explanation?
Sure. The showrunner model in the United States is kind of the showrunner is basically the CEO of the show. They're in charge of the storytelling, of course, running the writer's room, the creative, many of the creative decisions, overseeing the writers. If it's a brand new show, casting, and all of those delicious things we get to do in putting a show together, but also interfacing with the studio if there is one, and the network, ostensibly, whether it's Netflix or a streamer or what have you. So the job is it's a high-level management position, but it's also a highly creative position. So you have to make sure you have all the right people in all of the right areas so you can delegate. So in a perfect world, you have directors you can rely on, writers you can rely on, et cetera, but you're the one who is the captain of the ship.
So is it like 50-50, creative and managing, or?
Well, it actually depends on the showrunner. Some showrunners are just writers. Some showrunners are writer and directors, and it depends. It's not a hard and fast rule, like this is 50-50. It just depends on what the showrunner excels at. Somebody like a massive showrunner like a Dick Wolf or a David Kelly, they do all of that. I mean, they are writing. David Kelly still writes longhand on a legal pad, everything, but he also oversees all of it and is responsible for the budget. So it's a 360 degrees, a very big job. I like to delegate. That's my thing.
Big responsibility. So it's funny because in Germany we're still struggling of the word showrunner, and especially when it comes to credits. In the German Screenwriters Association, we've recently defined a showrunner, and it says that creator, head writer, and showrunner are functions that are reserved for writers. Anyone who creates series does so as a writer, even if she is also a producer or director. So Tyron, you've been also a creator of Saxon. Can you tell us how you three divided these positions between of the three of you, and how you shared responsibility?
Yes. I wasn't showrunner on our show, but we had a concept where we had three creators. Out of those three creators, we would all write. And we had three executive producers. Two of them would also be writing. You know, so we had like one executive producer that like took care of more of the business side of things. Then we had two creators that would mainly write and also look a little bit at the business side. So, and one of the creators, it's a bit complicated, one of the creators also then turned out to be the showrunner, because he had the most experience when it comes to big shows like this. So he kind of functioned as the person that was in between the creative and the money the most, because like very often that becomes an issue. You know, if you're like in the production and you feel like, okay, we might have to cut down a little bit and write the story into the budget that's like still left over. And then there's one person who has to coordinate that pretty much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So it was more like divided to all the different aspects of production, not as you're like used to do it in the US. But Matt, you've been working also in in Europe as a showrunner. So can you tell us like what is like different in Europe? What is different in the US? Have you seen like specific things that you can point out and say what we do different in Europe?
Well, I'm not a shy person, so I was like, this is how I would like to run the show, and that's how it went. So it just was, I think that where you can get into trouble is if you don't have a North Star and somebody who has the creative vision in a show and can actually execute that vision with trusted, creative, and talented partners. One of them is here, Rachel, who I've made Fallen with. She's an amazing writer. And I couldn't have done the show without her. Like there was no show. So when you have people around you who you can, so it's very much very similar to what you did, but the nomenclature is I'm the showrunner. I make all the final decisions, but I take all What I think I'm pretty good at is picking out good ideas for other people and then taking credit for them. But I really, it's part of what it is really listening to the people around you, and then also delegating. So it is, when I came to Europe, and I love shooting here, it was awesome because I think Europe is film first and filmmaking first, not money making first. It feels like people like Tyron are here because they're passionate about telling stories and they want it to. And I think they're in the United States, it's the same way too. But it just feels like in Europe, there's more efficiency in the filmmaking, and people are making it because they're just desperate to do it. And it shows on the screen. That's why your show looks amazing. And it's like that's so inspiring to me as a fellow filmmaker to see the love behind it. And with Europe, you tend to have less money to make a show. Like in the United States, you have, like on Handmaid's Tale, we had tons of money. And if mistakes were made, it was like, kind of like whatever. But here, every single euro matters. And I think that puts a very powerful creative force behind spending those euros to tell your story.
You're like showing the positive side of it. I'm very jealous. Like having tons of money to create a show is like also amazing.
But it's also desperation is the mother of invention. So if you don't have a lot of money and you have talented writers that you're working with, you can figure out the solution to not having enough money all day long.
I think what is probably a combining factor between the two, like slightly different models, is that we thought it was very important that the writer is also the producer and has a chance to protect the story, because how it used to be in Germany a lot, and I know a lot of writers complain about that. They get paid for their work, they hand in their work, and then they're out the picture. And then whatever happens with the story is up to luck, up to directors, up to the producer. But so I think if you have a very passionate story that you want to tell, and if it's important for you, and especially I think that goes for all the stories, but especially for stories that are being told from a new perspective, maybe a perspective that hasn't been portrayed so much in the German TV and film business, I think it's extra important that there's someone who's able to protect that story from beginning to end, because that's where the vision is, and I think we need to move more from writing and giving it away to being able to, protect the story throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I assumed it was, I didn't know that was the case here. So when in the United States and when I'm knocking around Europe making shows, it's always writer first. It's always the writer is the person who is and that person who has the vision or has created a show or whatever is that person is in the edit bay who gets it done, of course there's always other people with thoughts in the studio and the money people and notes and all that whole thing that you go through and the compromises and you fight for a particular scene or what have you. But it's very much writer driven. Like it's not, in the feature film world, it's the opposite. I don't know if that's the feature film world over here, but in the United States, the feature film world predominantly is director-driven. So that's the difference.
So Tyron, do you feel like there's a German angst or something like that to give more power to writers? And when yes, why so?
To be honest, I think that's how the structure that we have, it grew that way. Why it is that way, I really don't know. Because I've been an actor most of my life, and I don't know why it is that way. I know that there's still a fear of letting people that weren't allowed to tell stories in the past to let them tell stories now. That I know, but about the writers, I wouldn't be able to answer that. Does anybody know why is it that way?
Yeah, please tell us.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it's different to stand up for topics like that, but we know that. But that's actually like a good bridge to jump into the social impact topic, because do you feel like the show running model is beneficial to social impact, and how? Like in which case would you like to start, Matt? Because we talked like about some social impact topics like in writing, human resources, sustainability. So there's like a large amount of topics you can kind of carry on also as a showrunner, like you want to have plastic on set or not, you want to protect people on set from toxicity or not. Like, do you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that everybody deserves a safe and peaceful and equitable place to work. I don't, whether you're working at Five Guys or you're working on set, like it just should be. Everybody should have the opportunity. I think that everybody should have the opportunity to tell their stories. And unique perspectives are always, to me, as a showrunner, and I read a script that's completely outside of my zone of influence, I'm completely taken in by it because it's something I'm learning, and I'm learning about something new. So one would hope that new voices and are accepted and supported. So that's, and as far as like toxicity, there's zero toxicity on, there's zero tolerance in North America for that. I mean, that's kind of like the 90s and the early aughts. Like
on your sets or in general?
Oh, no, no, we don't. We run a really, generally speaking, people are kind and people understand the great opportunity that they have to do the jobs that we do. I had a sidebar. So I came home from working on Spinning Out, and my son was in a sandbox. And his name's Grayson, and I came home and dropped my bags and got in the sandbox with him. And he said, Daddy, can you move that car over there? I was like, yeah, I'll move it. Okay, now can you just make a larger castle on that side? I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And he said, now can you move the car back? This is what you do. It is. Yes, there's much greater, responsibility in business and all that other stuff, but you have to remember that the essence of creating and collaborating is alchemy and beautiful, and I think everybody deserves that opportunity.
But do you feel like that's something a showrunner should do?
100% top down. The management starts there. Yes, 100%. You have to enforce, like if you're not being a leader, as you lead from the top, and if people are looking at somebody who's acting like a jerk, that makes it okay for other people to be jerks? No, you got to set an example.
How do you feel about that, Tyron? Like, is a show running model like a key to actually like take care of social responsibility and to kind of also save the stories? Also from the beginning, because it happens when you're writing them. It's not only on set. It starts earlier and it gets till the end to the marketing point. Yeah.
Well, I would have to answer the question from my subjective point of view. And since we all found out we don't know why writers are being treated the way they're being treated in Germany, the only reason I became a creator and producer is the fact that I wasn't being offered the roles that I wanted to play as an actor, because people of color in Germany don't get good roles. I played my first role in '94, and I was in over 70 movies since then, and series and whatnot. But I would say 80% of the roles that I've been offered were cliché roles, like playing the black guy. You know, it wasn't about the character, it was about being alien, it was about being the other. And so that was so frustrating to me, you know, because I've been vocal about it. It's not that I've been vocal about it since forever, but it just like didn't change because nobody cared, nobody wanted it, the market didn't allow it, that I had to become a creator, a producer myself, in order to change that. And in that process, I found out that in the structure that we still have in Germany, which is still very old school, hence we talk about change, that if you want to tell stories from a different perspective, and not only the POC, person of color perspective, but also from a queer perspective, also from a female perspective, you would have to actually be the producer to make sure that the writer's room is more diverse, to make sure that other people, other directors get the chance to add their perspective to make sure that, as it's usually done right now, we all talk about diversity and inclusion, but it's very performative. It's usually then everything's done and then one actor gets picked and he's like black, and why isn't he black and gay at the same time? You know, and then everybody who's watching it goes like, okay, so boxes have been ticked and we don't like it because it doesn't feel right. You know, so that's not the only solution to just have like the actors at the end. It goes on, you need to, if you tell a different perspective, if you tell a story from a different perspective, it's important, and also the person that edits the show understands that perspective, because like a movie is being invented a couple of times. Like when you write it, when you shoot it, when you edit it, when you put the music to it, when you market the movie. So I think if we want more creativity, if we want more diversity and inclusion, I think it is important to have someone who's in charge, like the showrunner or the executive producer, that has influence at every stage of the production process in order to protect that story that needs to be told from the right perspective.
But who's also from the right, so who's also from the community you're talking about? Like.
From the community, or from people that have that experience. Like when Denzel Washington is being asked why he thinks it's important that his scriptwriter is like a black person, then Denzel Washington answered that it's not about color, it's about culture. It's about that whoever writes a story, they need to understand like deeply what's going on in this person's life. And I think that's not just, my opinion is, it's not just about the position of the writer, but those decisions are being made over and over again in the production process. And there needs to be someone at the helm that understands who is supposed to make which decisions in order to protect the story and make it three-dimensional.
Word. So you did when we talked earlier about these topics, you told me like 2 examples from your own show. Like one was, because it's also always about money. So is a production company, a streamer, or a broadcasting station willing to give money to also support newcomers who don't have probably the money to go to film school or whatever? And you did like something very big with Disney, I think. Can you tell us something about that?
So when we got the green light from Disney, when we got the so when we got the green light from Disney, we received a letter from the Disney president in Europe. And he told us how happy he is and how happy the company is to have such a diverse story, with such a diverse cast, and that they would be willing to do whatever it takes to make it a success. And so I thought, wow, that's like a nice pass for me to take it further. And so I wrote back like, okay, so are you only happy on paper? Like I said it a little more friendly. Or are you also willing to put some money behind your words? Because if we want to make it more diverse, it also means we need a crew that's more diverse. And that means that we would have to give people a chance to do a job that they maybe haven't done before, or that people that didn't get the chance before to collect so much experience. And so actually Disney then decided to give us an extra amount of money to do a thing which is called a shadowing program. So we could put 5 people in positions together with more experienced people, and they could then actually learn on the job. So after our production, they'd be able to fill out this job the next time. And would streamers do it by themselves without someone asking? I don't know. But when you ask and when you explain why this is important, then the response has been good so far. Same goes with Netflix. We did like a PUC writers incubator with Netflix, where Netflix realized, okay, it's important to give people a chance, to help them to get on the next step. So yeah.
I just want to point out for you guys that like what Tyron did is really big, because all of the people you get into the Disney project, they are all visible now, and that's really amazing. So he did something in 1 year, 2 years, that Germany was kind of not open for it. So really, you did a big thing, like a role model. And one other thing, and then I would like to talk to Matt about how he handles that on set. But we talked about like the process, like every process in filmmaking or series making. And you told me also how important it was that you, in the position you were, and that is a position of power, and only if you're in a position of power you can like complain about something like that. Otherwise you wouldn't be heard. So you told me how important it was to you to be in the editing room, to watch the editing and to also criticize it and to work together with the director. It was about microaggression.
So I know there's some people of the students that we spoke to today. I know you guys saw the show, but who else saw the show? Hat jemand Sam an Sachse gesehen? Okay, there's some people in the room. Great. So in the first 2 episodes, we kind of introduced the character. And it was important for us to tell his story in a more dimensional way. So in the first 2 episodes, we have a lot of things what we call microaggressions. So there's like little mosquito bites of like racism, aggression, but they're microscopically, and you don't really know, was it racist, was it not? And so we had received notes from Disney that they wanted a little more speed in the first 2 episodes. And so what the editor did, which he's like a very good experienced editor, but he wasn't a person of color, he was like an older white guy. And because he didn't have understanding what microaggressions are, because he's just never experienced it, he decided to take out all the microaggressions from 1 and 2. And what was left over was like the black guy being beat up by 5 Nazis. But that's not what we wanted to tell in our story. For us, it was more important to see that it's more painful if you're a white girlfriend that you have a kid with, and you try to explain something to her, and she can't understand it because she hasn't experienced it. And that there's not that the words, maybe because it's set in 89 to 92, that back then we didn't even have the proper terms to describe what microaggression is, So, and it's more painful if your girlfriend doesn't understand you, or if your mother doesn't understand you, than you being beat up by 5 Nazis. And what the editor said is like, well, but if I go to a government official and he's not nice to me, that happens to me too, and maybe he just had a bad day. But the difference is, if you like a person of color, you can't tell whether he's not nice to you because he's maybe racist or not. And this like not knowing mixed with you definitely know that person wants to kill you. This makes it like so strange. And to make a long story short, I think if I wouldn't have been in a producing position, I wouldn't have been in the editing room. So chances are pretty good that it would have turned out to be a very one-dimensional first 2 episodes. And that would have changed the whole course of the story completely.
Wow, that shows us how important it is to like include also people who has an impact on the story, because they know how it is to be black or to be queer or to be a woman. And Matt, you told me like if you're writing something and you don't have the perspective of one character, what do you do then? You told me that you're kind of like getting experts into the projects to work with them so they can show you their perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's authenticity of voice and story is of paramount importance when you're telling it, and when you're writing. And you know, I'm in case you guys didn't know, I'm a middle-aged white guy. But
no, we didn't notice.
I know, but there's, you know, I have a very specific lane. There's a host of experiences that I have, but there's no way that I can be authentic in every color of the rainbow. There's just no way. So it's important to have a writer's room that is diverse, and that's not just box checking, that's story checking. It's making sure that the story is as authentic as possible and reaches as many people as possible, because if you sanitize it, which is what that editor was doing, every audience member, no matter what their creed or color or nationality, will sense it, they'll feel it. They'll just know. They'll know something's wrong. Like it's not, and now you have a beautiful piece because you were there to protect it, versus something that felt like kind of run of the mill. Oh yeah, that was a cool action scene. I understand what that trope is. It's one dimensional, but that's his example is exactly why you need diversity.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because otherwise you would kind of like produce stereotypes and reproduce them because you just use the knowledge you have.
Yeah, and I'm the first person to say, I don't know. You know, like I'm not going to pretend to have that point of view because I don't have it. But I want to learn. But me writing a scene, even with deep research, is never going to be as good as somebody who's experienced it.
So were you beating your ego the last years? Were you beating your ego the last years? Because to say I don't know is it's liberating. I mean, that's how you learn. I don't know all the time. There's stuff that I know about. I mean, we can put a, we can do a, you know, you guys could throw me a scene and I could direct it and Tyron could star in it and it would be awesome and we would crush it and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, let's go, dude. No, but I think that part of what it is just being empathetic and understanding what your limitations are. And once you understand what those limitations are, your heart is open to better storytelling and serving the greater good rather than your ego.
You also told me, like when we talked for the first time, that you were also firing people from set. Like, can you tell me how that was, and if it's
Yeah, I mean, my job for a number of years was. Do you guys see Ray Donovan? You know that show? Yeah. So I was kind of the Ray Donovan of TV for a while. Like I would come into a show that was broken in its first year and on fire and on budgets careening out of control, or the creative vision is whatever. And I'd come in and fix it. So, and part of fixing it was creating a culture of acceptance and kindness. And if people were mean-spirited or contentious, or, I mean, people have bad days, everybody does, I do, but if they were consistently contentious or disrupting the creative process, which is the antithesis of creative, reaching creative heights, because if you do not feel safe, no matter what your job is in a production, whether it's the writer's room or you're a PA or you are catering, whatever, if you do not feel safe, you're never going to do your best work, ever. You're going to always second guess yourself. Oh my God, am I going to get fucked? So we do our best every day to create that. And if people along the way are they're not like-minded and they have particular views that are not as open-minded as other people, they leave. And it's a tough decision because my heart goes out to anybody losing a job. But sometimes I've been on shows where I'm not the good fit. They're just like, hey, you out. So it's like it's what happens. But usually that's for me a creative thing. But as far as a human thing, it's incredibly important to me that people are treated equally and with fairness and kindness. And what happens then is you soar to great creative heights as a result.
Can I ask you a question though?
No.
Okay. Because the way you tell it sounds almost too good to be true, you know? I mean, and I believe you if you say like you're egoless in a moment where you say like someone else has maybe a better perspective on the story. But what would you say, what's the percentage of productions in America where that is the case? Because here in Germany, we don't have that. It's yet very much a struggle of like who gets to tell what story. That's still like a power struggle here. Is that not the case anymore in America?
Well, I can't speak for all of America. I can just speak for myself. And
but for the market that you know, you could probably say something about that.
Well, I think that, I think that everybody's a work in progress, and that includes America. And I think that there are people that are driven by ego, and there are people that are driven by story, and there are people that are driven by money, and there's all different types of people making television. But I think you will find predominantly people who are successful in the business are people who are fair and are offering opportunities to people, and are they're open to collaboration. So I can't, again, I don't know enough about Germany to speak with any degree of authenticity about your situation here, but just hearing that from you about the struggle of a writer getting the recognition or the power of being able to be through the edit, that's not a thing in the States. We are doing that.
But would you say that's like a new development? Because I remember not too long ago there were hashtags Oscars so white and so on and so forth. So is that a new development?
Well, I think it's evolving. And I think that there's been seismic changes in the United States that are for the good. And I'm seeing that every day, and I'm seeing it in people that I work with, other people that didn't have opportunities that now do, and it's, I'm hopeful.
That's good.
Yeah.
Tyron looked like kind of skeptical. But
no, I'm truly interested, because right now here it's clearly still a power struggle.
I think the bottom line is good now. With the condensed, you guys all know the business is condensing, and it's much more difficult to make a television show than it was in sort of peak television. Everybody had a show. It was like my guy, like 10 people on my street had shows. I'm like, I got a show. You got a show? I got a show. Now it's like no shows. Good shows. That's it. So I think my feeling is, if you have a good story and you want to tell it with some authenticity, and if it's different and it can pop outside just sort of run of the mill, it's going to work. Like that's my hope anyway. That's why I feel so privileged to be here to talk to the students, because I love students, and I think it's like, yeah, go out and kick ass. Like, let's go. Like, don't tell your story. So it's inspiring to see hope in people's eyes instead of sort of fading regret in mine. That's.
Tyron, like, we know that in Germany the industry is still very white and also male. So what does it help to have like sensitivity readings, or like how do they call them? Diversity, inclusion, blah, blah, on set, or whatever. Does it actually help, or does it like put the pressure from the whole production to one person on set? And that's the point when they start to think about sensitivity readings or diversity or whatever. So like we're in the middle of the process shooting, and then they say, oh, we need someone for diversity. But does it help? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's better than nothing, because at least if there is someone on set, or if there's someone in the room, you think about it, whereas you wouldn't think about it if that wasn't the case. Is it a solution? Absolutely not. Because if you start thinking about those issues once you start shooting, it's already too late. I think if we want change in the types of stories that we tell, and let me use the word narrative that we have for the country we live in, I think it's very important to have different perspectives on various positions. And I think that's, even though everybody talks about diversity and inclusion now, it hasn't sunk into the structures. Because even if you have a good story as a writer, there's still a room of older white people deciding whether that's being produced or not, at the TV station. It's a little different with Netflix, because they made sure that also in the management, there's like people with different experiences. If you walk up in the Netflix office, it's like it looks on the street. But that's pretty much the only room I've seen in Germany, and I've been in a bunch of rooms where decisions are being made, and it's usually just like a room of usually nice, but like homogeneous, middle-aged, well-educated white people. And I think as long as this is the case, we just gonna make very small progress, and then one diversity and inclusion guy on set is not gonna change that. And I'm so passionate about it because I think we need, like politically, as the society that we have, like we're talking 25%, like every fourth person in this country has migration background. And the numbers show, because there's been studies, the numbers show that we are not represented in the narrative that Germany has. And if we are represented, then we're not represented in a good way. Then it's like one-dimensional, it's stereotypical, it's like if you Turkish or Arabic, then you're either a clan gangster or like you want to kill someone because someone's dating your sister. It's like super one-dimensional. And I think that's not just a problem because we also want a piece of the cake, but I think it's also a problem because the stories that we tell as a society are pretty much the roadmap for where a society is going to. And just like in America, it's like we don't know what's going to happen with making America great again guy. And same here, like we don't know what's going to happen for the next election. And I think we need stories that like show what's possible. You know, I think we need stories that teach us it's not all conflict, but there's like also solutions. And for that, everybody that's part of the society also needs to tell their stories.
When I was studying serial storytelling, our teacher told us, like, you know what? You're the most powerful people in the world because you can write stories. Do you feel like storytelling can change the world?
Yes.
Is it a hard question?
It's interesting because you become a writer because you have something burning inside you and you have a story that you want to tell. I do think that as you get more gray hairs, of which I have many, that you understand the impact that your writing has around the world. Because when you're making a show, you make it in a little bubble. You cast it, you make it with your friends, you have a wrap party. Yeah, it was great. High five. It was great. Great time. We'll be like a family forever. And then it goes to millions and millions and millions of people. You forget. I always forget that part. Like when I go to Comic-Con and I'm on the stage, I'm like, whoa, you guys, right? Okay, cool. Because you're so passionate and focused about telling your story, and you're cognizant of doing the best version of that show. But the impact of it can be seismic, and I think that good storytelling can. I don't know if it can change the world, but I think that it can really influence the world in a positive way. It can open up active discourse within a family. Shadowhunters, which was a show that I did, yes, it was about fighting demons and all that stuff, but the real epicenter of that story was about found family. And it was about a gay character coming out for the first time, and that was the stuff that really resonated with the fans and with the audiences, and people were impacted by that because they saw themselves on TV, and they were like, yes. And suddenly it became much more powerful. And once you have the reciprocal understanding with an audience, yes, you can move mountains. You got to be cognizant of the message you're sending, and I think hope is what it's about. Like it is getting different perspectives and giving people hope, because life can be hard, and the world seems much harder than it's been ever. I mean, I wasn't around for the plague, but that was tough. But I think that right now it just seems, I have 3 small children. I worry about them all the time. I worry about guns. I worry about the United States. I worry about a lot of things. But if I can have a very small part of entertaining somebody, even if it's just entertaining them, I feel blessed. It's what I'm meant to do. And I think there are other things that, much larger, bigger shows that have much greater social impact. But for me, in my little lane, I like to entertain people. And if it can help open a conversation in a family, or make them smile, or just have them forget about the fact that their mortgage rates just went up, or whatever it is. I think that's enough for me.
Well, yeah, clearly stories can change the world, because we shouldn't forget that like all the things we believe in are pretty much stories. Money, that you can buy something with like a piece of paper, that's a story. And it's a powerful story because we all believe in it, but it's a story. It was made up. Like all the religious stories we have, it's stories. So yeah, stories can change the world. I had the honor to work with Harry Belafonte for a while, and he said he had one thing that like inspired him that he heard from his mentor, Paul Robeson, and he said, like, make them sing your song and they want to know who you are. So he used his music and his films to kind of attract people and to be interested in what he has to say, and then he would weave in messages to change society for the better. He would walk with Martin Luther King, but yet then go back to entertaining and tell stories, through his songs, through his movies. And so to me, he was like a great inspiration, and I feel having the honor to work with him, it kind of helped me to find my way. Last, I want to show you something because I think that's important. I don't know if it works here, but there's a picture that went through the internet a couple of years ago. It was called, no, I didn't bring my glasses. I still find it. It was called The Dress. Do you guys know that picture? I still want to see if it works on the phone. Just bear with me. It's just like, here it is. So can you see that? No, but do you see colors? Blue and black. What colors do you see? Blue and black. Everybody sees it blue and black? No? Blue and brown. Does anyone see white and gold? Okay, so there's people that see white and gold. Hey, it's okay. You can, if you see white and gold, you can say that. What do you see?
Yeah, I see blue and black.
Blue and black. So it's like, usually, I guess if you're closer, half the people see it blue and black, and the other half sees it white and gold. And what happens is that it's just like an underdeveloped picture, and depending on the experiences that you made before in your life, how you experience light, your brain decides that it's either blue and black or white and gold. But nobody's wrong and nobody's right. They're both right. And so this is like a good example for like different opinions that we have right now, like even on the political spectrum, especially if you look at America, Democrats and Republicans, it's depending on the experiences that you made before, your brain decides from the same facts how you want to see that matter. And that's what we have in the world right now. So we need, and that brings me back to storytelling, I think we need to stay open to not say I'm right or you're right, but we need to tell stories from different perspectives, so then together we can find solutions that work for everybody.
You can clap. Applause. Thank you so much for sharing so many stories from your work. I would like to open the stage for the audience. Is there any question? You have now the unique chance to ask this amazing and well-experienced guys. Yeah. Ricky.
Hi, I'd like to ask about the process on Handmaid. How big, one of the American terms, how do you grind out scripts and keep the track being built in front of the train? So how big is the staff? How many episodes do you do? On the first day of shooting, how many scripts do you have, and how close to the plane do you get as the season progresses?
So Bruce Miller was as the showrunner of Handmaid's Tale, and he and I go back 25 years. I hired him on his first television show, and we keep hiring each other back and forth. And he, on this particular show, I was only in the room. I was on the show for about a year and a half because of the pandemic, so the show technically dragged out. 10 episodes. You want to have about 4 scripts when you go, but once the machine of production starts going, it eats those scripts pretty quickly. And so try to have the whole season at least outlined, but this, like all 10 episodes are not complete by the time the shows go. I think on Fallen we had all 8 scripts before we started, right? We had 7 scripts in outline, which is much better because like for that situation for Fallen, we had 7 scripts in an outline, so we were able to actually budget and look at the whole show and be efficient. And we can put the money where you need to, as opposed to putting out a fire, which is what you're talking about. So the writer's room on Handmaid's, the year I was there, was about 10 people. And it was a lot. It was funny because it's a lot of people. Do you guys know a show called Eureka? Did you get that show over there? Yeah, I did that show. So it's a pretty silly, fun procedural. Same writers. Mostly, from Eureka. So all those writers came with Bruce, Kira and Eric and all those people who are all amazing. So it was a pretty silly writer's room, which is because we're all really good friends and they're all like wickedly funny. But it also was how you're able to deal with that topic and dealing with the gravity of that story and the importance of that story. So, am I over telling you the answer? Is that enough? That's enough. Okay, I'll stop talking. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Do you need the microphone?
I don't think so. Tyron, I have a question to what you said as your last point about that there are so many experiences that in a way should all be heard because there's no really right and wrong because every experience has, or every person has a history which led them to be there. And I also have quite a hard time to, for example, think that a person is born inherently bad from my point of view. But I tried to find the words to ask the question correctly. A spectrum of, what I feel like is a good person to a bad person is quite elaborate, and even a bad person, in my opinion, or from my point of view, a bad person has a story to tell. When you say that every story has a right to be told, I don't know if I got you correctly there, but do you think that that includes the entire spectrum? Because that also is like, just funding-wise a problem, but it can ignite like whole new levels of discourse, which can be productive, can be disruptive. And or do you think that every story should be, in a way, self-aware and be told from a perspective that is critical about their own perspective or about people in general?
Let's get philosophical. We're human beings, and we're used to steer in directions by telling us stories around the campfire. Now, the way our brain works, and I read a book, it's called How Minds Change. I very much recommend it. If we think about things, even if we like super smart and think super hard, basically we're just gonna find reasons why our opinion is right. So if you only have one group of people that sit around the campfire, tell their version of the story, then this is only going to be one version of a story. The way our brains are made as human beings, it's okay if you have your strong opinion. It's okay if I have my strong opinion, but if we talk about it, if you get to voice your opinion, if I get to voice my opinion, our brains have the ability to learn. I can learn, you can convince me, I can convince you. But that only works if we have a dialogue. And hence, it's important that your story is heard just as much as my story is heard. And in the past, only your story was heard. And if someone would tell my story, it would be my story through your eyes. And as a society, in Germany, in America, in the world, we're not gonna find solutions for the challenges that we have right now, be it climate, be it millions of people moving where the wealth is, where food is, where water is. We're not gonna find solutions unless we all get to tell our stories and find solutions together. It's gonna be mayhem. That's what I was trying to point at.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's another question in the back.
This question goes to both of you, because I know, Tyron, you spent a couple months in America to market your show, right? You told us today in class. Mason, my question is, do you guys have any advice for people, European people wanting to transition working in the US or having a foot in the door into the US system? Because I think a big problem that we as writers face is that our agents are, if we get a German agent, then this agent only knows the people inside Germany, and there are all these borders, and I feel like that transitioning to other countries' systems is very hard because there are not a lot of German showrunners working in the United States. And I think it's hard for, especially when it comes to budgetary reasons, if we are writers knowing that we need a specific budget that is just like it's unable to be made in Germany, we have to find other industry channels to get our projects made. And I think if you had any advice on how to find that proper channel through agents or managers, that'd be helpful.
Yes. So, I'll tell you another story. So when I started writing and I wanted to create a television show, I saw the path of how to get something on I understood the path, and it was an impossible staircase. I just was like, how am I, nobody's gonna listen to me, nobody cares, I'm a kid, but I had this very specific show with a very specific point of view about you guys know what Outward Bound is? You ever heard of that? It's a high school program in the United States for troubled kids, for like at-risk youth. And I wanted to tell a story because I went to a boarding school. It wasn't a troubled school, but it was a boarding school, and I wanted to do an Outward Bound high school for at-risk teenagers. I wanted to do that show. Nobody cared what I had to say. Didn't matter that I could have been from Germany. It didn't make a difference. I was just some kid somewhere, right? So I put my credit card down, and I shot a pilot presentation, and I cast it, and I put it together, and I brought it to the one friend that I knew who said, this isn't terrible. Let's bring it to this other person. We got it to Lionsgate, and within a year, I had 22 episodes on the air. It takes thinking outside the box, not necessarily thinking about like, okay, then I'm gonna get my German agent to send me to CAA, and then you really have to create your own fire. And I think for the business in the United States, it is incredibly competitive, but who cares? Because you have a story that you're burning to tell, and why not go for it? Being on the ground there is probably a better situation for somebody like yourself. I don't even know you, but I'm just assuming that you want to connect and meet other writers and get involved in what it takes to make this larger show you're talking about. I don't really have a perspective on Germany, but I do in the United States, which is sort of, don't be afraid to take a risk, and don't be afraid to tell your story. And I have a friend of mine who he was trying to get a very fancy actor attached to his screenplay, and every day he took his screenplay and put it on the guy's lawn. Every day. Finally, he read it. They never made the movie, but at least he got the movie sold. That's the kind of, it's called chutzpah, right? It's like you just have that drive, and if you have a vision for your show and nobody else can tell, like if you're like, I really need money to make a medical show, it's like nobody's gonna care. If you have a particular story that is close to your heart that nobody else can tell, people will care. And that's how you get around it. That's how you get attention.
Can I add something to that? When I got to LA the first time, with the help of the Belafonte family, I was there as an actor, right? And I had a show reel that I thought was pretty good. There were things that were screened in Cannes, and you know, I thought it was really good. And through a friend of Harry, also an older guy, he told me, look, my son, he works at a talent agency, so for what it's worth, why don't you go over there and meet him? So it turned out it was UTA. So it took 2 months for me to get the meeting. I wrote an email, I sent the reel. So I walk into the office. It was like in Entourage, you know, with like glass walls and the valet part. You know what it's like. So I walk up in the room, and so the guy's on the phone. He ignores me for like 10 minutes. He's like on the phone. I'm like, okay, no problem. So he's like, okay, what can I do for you? I'm like, well, I sent you an email. Like, did you look at my show? He's like, no, I didn't have time. So what can I do for you? I'm like, no problem. I brought my laptop. Open my laptop. I show him the show reel. He looks at it for like about 10 seconds. He goes like, you know what? I think we're too big for you. Maybe we have drinks sometimes. Walks out the room. And I'm like, so I sat there for a second, and the secretary shows up. She's like, well, please. So I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, I knew the guy's father, okay? So I tell this to a friend of mine he used to be a Buddhist monk. He lives in Santa Barbara, and he laughs at me. You know, I'm like, Dava, why are you laughing? This wasn't funny. He's like, okay, let's play a game. I'm like, okay. He's like, are you ready to play lead roles in America? I'm like, I don't know, I would play a support. He's like, no. Are you ready to play lead roles in America, yes or no? I'm like, okay, yes. He's like, how much money you want to earn playing your first lead role? I was like, I don't know. He's like, okay, I want you to say, for my first lead role in America, I want to earn $10 million. And I couldn't say it because energetically, I didn't even think that big. Coming from Germany, like, this is impossible. You can't make that much money here. So then he explained to me that, you know, I walked into a room of someone who only picks up the phone if it's like a multi-million, he was the senior partner. He only picks up the phone if it's like a multi-million-dollar deal. And I walk in there energetically unprepared to even meet a guy like this. It's like you walk into Bayern München, soccer, the management, and you tell them, look, I want to play soccer on the weekend, can you help me? Like, even if they wanted to, they couldn't help me. It wasn't impossible. It wasn't possible. And that was the same thing. Like, I haven't even done my homework to vibe with the guy. And that taught me so much about how it's different here and in America. And then, like, I kind of changed my game, and like, I didn't make it big, but it was okay. So I wanted to share that with you.
Is there another question? Like, I think we have time for one more question.
I want to finish a project, and I wanted to know how was your experience with that? If you have any advice on how to proceed with production companies, commissioning editors, or something like that to get them to trust. I don't know.
If you don't believe yourself that you can do it, why would anyone else believe that you can do it?
I mean, I do.
But that's basically it. You know, if you walk into the room and say, like, I don't think I can do it, but maybe you can help me. Just like you said, like, I need a lot of money for, like, my script. No one's going to give it to you. I think I don't know, like, you just I don't know what to answer. You just have to go for it. And it would be nice in a perfect world if you'd just be a good writer and then people would recognize you and pick it up. But as long as that's not the case, I don't see any other way than to fight for it, like maybe in a less conventional way that we used to do movies. Because we hear, like, we used to, someone writes a script and someone gets the funding from Filmbot, so and so, and then you need funding from Baden-Württemberg, and if that's not happening, then the movie is not being made. And then it's like the movie's mediocre, but it doesn't matter because you got the money from the funding and then nobody sees it, but that's not a problem. That's not gonna cut. If you have a story that you want to tell, you just, like you said, write a script and throw it on the lawn of, I don't know, ZDF-Intendant, till he reads it. And like, just, I didn't learn any of it. I didn't learn scripting. I read a lot of scripts being an actor. I didn't learn how to produce. I just produced like a hip-hop TV show, which it wasn't like much of producing. So I just wasn't, even if I was scared, even if I wasn't sure whether I can do it, I still did it. And then you learn along the way, and then you fail a couple of times, that's not a problem, and the next time you're better. So really just go for it, just do it. That's the only way.
And it's, you know, it's also like if you're a writer, I'm assuming? You're a director too, or writer?
I'm writing producer.
Okay, excellent. So you need a director in your life. I'm available. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. So, but sometimes it can help. There's strength in numbers. So I think if you're trying to do this by yourself, and maybe you have maybe you have a pilot, I don't know, for a TV show that you've written that you're very passionate about, and you can shoot a little proof of concept with. I mean, I shoot stuff on my iPhone all the time that I have. Forget which show it was. It was Spinning Out. Like I put a bunch of stuff from my iPhone in the show. Like so, there's ways to get your vision realized, even in a short format, to use as evidence that it is worthy. Because somebody will watch a 3-minute short. They may not read your script right away, but if they're like, "Holy crap, this is good," and then I'm going to read the script, and then they're going to meet with you. So it's trying to stack the deck with you as a creative force and a singular vision that will not be denied. And that's what you got to do. It's not, nobody owes you a living. Nobody's going to give you a TV show. Everybody is fighting for it all the time. And even when you have all the gray hairs, I'm still fighting every day. I'm like, you know, Rocky Balboa, maybe Rocky 5, I think now. It's like, so that's what you got to do.
Sam took 18 years, by the way. It was turned down, like, everybody said, like, yeah, interesting story, but who wants to see a film with a black lead? You know? So you just gotta keep pushing.
Yeah, it takes time, but thank you for the coaching, guys. Like, we need a second meeting, Nadia. Yeah, I feel like we wrapped up every topic we could. So if you have to add something for social impact, you have the chance now. Otherwise, Matt will give us a short introduction to the pilot of The Handmaid's Tale, and then we're going to watch it. So feel free to stay here and watch this amazing and also disturbing show, to be honest. You know that probably.
So this was written by and this is another example of somebody not giving up. So my dear friend Bruce Miller created this show, and he was the showrunner on Eureka with us, and then we did a show called Alphas with David Strathairn, and then he was working on a show called The 100 as a co-executive producer, and he loved that job because that job meant that you never had to you never had to make all the big decisions. The pressure was off and you can just write and have a good time, so he was doing that. But he loved Margaret Atwood's book, and he was committed to trying to be the writer for this, and everybody said, you can't do it. Everybody said, no, how would you possibly have this perspective? And he fought, and he got to write the pilot, and it was one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've ever seen. And you'll see the evidence of that, and that's why it was, when The Handmaid's Tale came out, it wasn't a big budget show. This was a small show that came out, and it was just a revelation. And I think a lot of it was timing, too. It came out exactly at the right time in America, and it really woke people up. And it really terrified a lot of people. But the cast is unbelievable. Lizzie Moss is unbelievable. They're all top-notch actors. But it all started with the script from a guy who fought to get the job. And he got it. And look at him now.
thank you so much for sharing all these amazing and big stories. We wish you luck with all of your projects, and the audience too, of course. Keep fighting, and remember, storytelling is always connected to like social impact. You can change the world via storytelling. These guys showed us that this is possible. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to the IFS for organizing this. Thank you again to Network Movie for supporting this session, and have fun watching the first episode of The Handmaid's Tale.
Thank you.
Thank you.